Humble yourself in the wisdom of the elders. We gotta bend down low and
humble yourself in the sight of your brother.
Ask him what he knows and
humble yourself in the sight of your sister. Bend down low and humble yourself in the knowledge of the children. We gotta know what they know, and we shall lift each other up. Higher and higher we shall lift each other up.
Good to see you back, sister. Holding you and your family, in our hearts. So I'm going to finish my talk today about Dharma Protectors. And this ties also into our offering of mantras. Like mantras aren't words, they're sounds. I won't say words, but they're sounds. So what do mantras do? I mean, what power is in a mantra? I want us to have the right understanding of mantras. And because we don't have the right understanding, we can't get the produced the results that we're looking for from using them. So if I am reciting a mantra, what am I doing? When you recite a mantra, what are you doing?
Transmitting. I don't know what the word would be, but transmitting, and with the expectation that there's something to receive it and respond.
humbling and inviting.
Doing what?
Humbling myself and inviting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know, because I feel like there's something that I'm not getting. I think I'm supposed to be getting in a rhythm of the mantra, is that right? And,
I just want to hear your thoughts.
okay.
I'm not going to answer
Your feelings,
individual.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Connecting with the vibrations of the.
Okay.
Tapping into the power that's inherent in the mantra and where it came from.
I've used it as an object of meditation in the past. It's an object of meditation.
Okay.
And the mantras have different meanings. So there's an invocation, evocation with the mantra in an interaction. Like in my case, I'm thinking about communicating with Green Tara and Om Tara, Tutara, Ture, Soha. Each one of those syllables has a particular meaning.
Any other comments?
Just quieting the mind. Be receptive.
The way I understand it, it's like sacred sounds that necessarily don't have a equivalent sexual meaning that come from the awakened minds of the holy ones. So I think of it like a key to unlock.
Okay.
You're reprogramming your subconscious.
Okay. Any other?
hooking into the power, the yidam, or the yidam hooks us
Mm.
into.
Okay. Okay, all of those are good, ideas, good reference points. I didn't hear anything that seemed to be diametrically opposed, to the Dharma, but usually when we think of something and we have an answer for it, it becomes that's the answer. But when you put all of them together, that's more like what the answer is. So I think the important thing to recognize is that it's almost like sending out like when planes are coming in, or planes for landing, and in the airport there's a beacon, and they send out a beacon, and the beacon guides the plane in. So it's sort of like, to combine all of those ideas, it's like sending up the beacon. Now, I can't just use any kind of light. There's gotta be something in the connection of the beacon that connects it a certain way. Otherwise, I can do my flashlight all day long, and that's not going to give the connection that's needed for the plane to land. So when we are reciting or chanting mantras, and we're entering into the stream, to the energy, to the flow of the mantra, it is an invitation for the holy beings, like the Dharma Protectors, for instance, to come to your aid. But the work is not done through the mantra. The work is done through the assistance and the support of the Dharma Protector. And that's why if you don't have a heartfelt connection or relationship with the Dharma Protector, you can recite mantras all day long and they will do nothing, because there's sometimes we get the idea that there's something inherent in the mantra that is the source of the power. And in a way that's true, but not in the way that we think. Has the technology is in it that sends up a beacon that can connect. So that connection with the Dharma Protector is what allows something to change in your life or in your circumstance, them coming to your aid. And if they don't recognize the beacon through the and that could be for any number of reasons. It could be because you're in other words, without having a Dharma, without having a Dharma Protector, and without using the instrument that has been given us, there will be no one to guard us, no one to protect us at all times. And this is one difference in the capacity of this is what gives more potential to a Mahayana practitioner, one who practices who does Mahayana practices over just Theravada practices, because their total reliance is on ourselves. And he does say rely on yourself, you know. But that's the first step. Once one comes to rely on, if I don't put forth no effort, I'm not going to get anywhere. But then there's a step that goes beyond that. It starts with, you've got to do the work. But the other part of it is that there's no way for you to accomplish all the work you have to do without supports. And that's why we have Dharma Protectors. That's why there are Bodhisattvas in the world to support us at what we initiate. And so we have a greater chance of coming to completion or to reaching our spiritual objectives if we, through allowing them to function or flow in their level of utilization, you know. Sometimes someone wants to help somebody and they say, oh no, it's okay, I got it, you know, and you just leave them to it, but it could have been accomplished twice as fast. It could have been accomplished better. One may even have more skill than you have in doing it, so it could be a great help to you. But because you know you can do it, you know, you just say, no, that's all right. So it's difficult for us to even think about relying upon or having reliance in holy beings to help us with our work, or at least particularly in the West, we think we're just gonna get mindful and that's gonna just fix everything, you know. But and mind will fix some things, but there are many things that go beyond the mind consciousness that need to be activated. And this is where we start to separate off from, you know, just from worldly usages and worldly psychology. And this is what becomes a stretch for Buddhist practitioners who are overly posited in its usage for worldly affairs to help us. And mostly because it has some languaging through the poor usage of language or the limitations of language. It sounds like something that we have heard before that we have rejected, or it sounds like our definition of religion, or it sounds like we're going back to something that we have rejected or we think is outside the scope of intelligence or our sciences today. And it is a fundamental mistake. And so sometimes we are doing fine with our understanding of the Dharma, using, you know, using the sixth consciousness combined with the seventh consciousness to order our life, order our affairs, and to give us a perspective. But that's not going to get you out of samsara. Otherwise, there would be no need for Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. There would be no need for Dharma protectors. Because we need them, then we have to investigate and understand what the benefit is for us. And so, although we don't talk about it too much in the Hinayana. That's why it can take 3 billion years for you to get out of samsara. But these great Vajra beings are the ones who, even when we talk about a quick path or a shortcut, don't take a shortcut. There's really no shortcut at all that takes you off the path, but take a shortcut that allows you to move more speedily on the path. So we have 2 types of Dharma protectors. One is the Dharma protector for undertakings, and the Dharma protector for undertakings are they are not fully enlightened beings. We have all these classifications of beings, right? Like, I'm a human being, and there's an animal, and there's some beings that we call ghosts. They have a different composition, different kind of body. We talk about the 5 levels of beings, but it's not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because within every level, there's innumerable different kinds and types of beings. I was watching a program the other night, and I need to watch it again. It came on about 4 in the morning, and it was on plants and trees. And I'm really not into that, except I like looking at beautiful plants and things like that. But but I don't like to. I don't like to plant. I don't like to dig. I just like to look at them. And so I was wondering why I was interested in that show, and it got on to trees, and it was showing how they've discovered like how trees communicate, and that so how certain trees like lump together and they feed each other what they are lacking. And it was just fascinating. And, it was fascinating to me. Now with the plants, they presented the plant kingdom completely differently than how they did the tree kingdom or the tree systems. And I was thinking about what Buddha Master said, because he told us that trees are not sentient beings. And I felt like trees have sentience, and that's all. He didn't go into it any further than that. He just said they are a different classification. But watching this show helped me, and that was about 5 years ago that he said that. And I would ask some other, of his disciples, like, do you know what he meant by that? Did you get more information? Nobody ever got any more information about that. So I'm like, okay, so am I gonna, because I believe in hugging a tree, and I believe I get something from the tree. I guess so. I'm thinking like they must be sentient. I think Buddha Master made a mistake on that one. That was kind of how I held it, And then I said, how could you make a mistake on it? Could there be some level of understanding I would have to be able to understand that? Well, maybe so. And this is how I address things when there's something that I have a question, that I have a question about. I try not to like just dismiss it offhand, and say, well, I know, or I'm gonna hold on to what I know. I set that aside and say, is there some other way that I could look at this, that I can open up to get the understanding of, of, of that, to understand that statement, or understand that, I won't say it's a concept, to understand that reality. I take it as a reality. They're different things. So when I was watching the show, and they had trickled it down to these like kind of like mathematics and science, and and suddenly it didn't look like sentient to me. It looked like not mechanical, but like computer, and how they related to each other. And I started thinking about our AI today, and how AIs can train themselves to know more things, to, assimilate data, and they're not thinking like sentient beings are thinking, but yet they are compounding their capacity to put things together. And suddenly I could see that suddenly there was space made in my own mind for another classification of being. And sometimes it's just knowing how to work ourselves out of our fixed notion that opens up a crevice, so that some other slight way of seeing something can change, or allow for us to have a fuller understanding. If we want to understand form is emptiness, and emptiness is form, that's a huge leap. So we're going to have in-between ways that we start to see the crossover, the unification of these two concepts, because we have a concept of what nothing is and what something is. And he says those are just two words: nothing or something, or empty, or or form. And we can talk about it intellectually till the cows come home, but to get closer to an actual realization of it takes more words. Won't help that. That's what I'm saying. More words won't help it. More talking about it won't help it. But we have to be looking for those gaps, those spaces between what we already accept as real, what we already accept as true, and putting it up against something that for us has no basis in reality, or can't be true if this is true. And this is a very subtle process. And to get towards it, there has to be a willingness and an openness to stretching, to allow something to slip into the gap. That's our biggest obstacle and our biggest hindrance to progress and growth in the Dharma, is whether or not we create spaces for a different type of understanding, for an add-on to come in. That's how the expansion occurs. And so, yes.
Like an algorithm patch?
Yes, yeah, we have to allow, and most of us, we really don't create that space, and so there's it doesn't leave a lot of room for things to come in. What can help us? So when it's not just inviting Dharma protectors to enter, your mandala, but one has to establish a place for them. Not just inviting them. It's like saying, come over to my house and you got your door locked. So you're like just calling and inviting or whatever, but your front door is locked. They can't come in. So there is this establishing a place for them. It's specifically inviting them. And this requires having a method of practice, practice related to them to invite them to come. And then they will help you in your good undertakings. So in the Bible, they just made it really simple, said you have not, because you ask not. And when you ask amiss, you ask for the wrong things. And then we just had to like figure out what that meant, and most of us couldn't figure out what that meant. But that's a simple way of saying it. So the question is, and Buddhamaster gave a good example about the Dharma Protector. Let's say that you, for those of you who like to go out into the wilderness, in the sit or in the forest and places that say you're going out there to meditate, right? And then here comes a mountain lion, So, I mean, like you can recite all the mantras you want, but mantras, what the mantra is not what will protect you, but if you have established or created a space in your practice, like the beacon and the landing ground, it's the Dharma protector that will come and protect you from the lion. It's not so much your reciting mantras, or doing mudras or whatever, but they will come to your rescue. That's a tangible thing, So we have to be careful that we don't go into a kind of like a magical kind of thing when we're working with these concepts. Do you understand what I mean? And I want to make sure that I'm clear about that, because we will start to think it's because we're doing something with our hands and we're reciting syllables that nobody knows the meaning, but they're magical and they're making things happen. But it's actually petitioning where there has been, and I like the way that he said it, where a place has been established there for them. Now, one thing that brought this up for me is I have a altar at home. It's a really nice altar. It's big. It's longer than this, and it's full, But I can run my hand across it like this, and it's full of dust because I never tend to it. Likewise, we have the mandala of the heart. But when do we tend to it? Do we clean it? Do we polish? Do we polish it? Because once we learn something, we think, well, we got it down. We like throw it around and, but really, have we, and do we offer it up in such a way, that to unlock the door? Have we prepared for our guests? Or do we throw up Hail Marys when things get bad for us. Are we, I had Busita get me some new lights to go on my altar. It made, I tended to it. And once I did, I felt a reconnection with, so the images put me in remembrance of real beings, you know. And so we start something with enthusiasm, and about a month later, we done with that. Now it just sits there and it gathers dust, and we feel like we're still there with it, but we have long since left it, And we do that with meditation. We go through a spurt and we're really intense in our meditation, and then something happens and some of that wanes and we leave that. Now we're done with that. We go with reading, something, and then we read for a while and then we're done with that. And we go and that's what we do. But this kind of establishment of a place is what I'm talking about today. Establishing a place so that it's always there, always in the forefront of your heart and your mind. It's always the lens through which you see life and try to understand things. So the reason for this is because of how the mind consciousness, the ordinary mind consciousness, because that causes us to fall back into these familiar spaces. So your mind consciousness can cause you to become accomplished as well. But to become accomplished through the mind consciousness, one has to create those spaces, those gaps that continually widen so that prajna can come in. We're not going to be able to pull prajna out of the mind consciousness. It does not have the capacity. So we have to always be creating a condition, an opening for wisdom to come in. And I'll tell you, it does not fail. Wisdom does not fail you. The mind can fail you because it only has a reference for what's already in it. What's already in the mind. And so whenever something new comes, the mind is putting it up against what? What it already knows. So it takes a kind of, more than just an effort, it takes a kind of trust. It takes a kind of confidence in the Dharma to allow you to expand, or there'd just be no way to do it. You don't have to call it faith. You don't have to call it belief, but you get the idea of what's required, that you have to have some trust based on what you already know, or based on what you know about Dharma, or it could be based on what you know is not working from the tools you already use in ordinary life. And if you've gone through everything in your arsenal and nothing is working, then you can be open to try something else that's unproven to you at this moment, and you can put it to the test. And so he speaks of us being like scientists that are willing to investigate. And as opposed to, and he uses words like practitioner. And I always had a problem with with that because I come out of a faith tradition and we didn't consider ourselves practicing. You know, this is the life that we live and the lens through which we see and understand the world. And to me, that's very different than practicing, you know. So I had difficulty understanding practice. And matter of fact, sometimes I still have difficulty because it can become a hindrance when we think of it in that kind of not all in way. And that's why they talk about combining practice with faith. That becomes your ground of being or the place that you live from. And if you can hold this, you will see your Dharma beginning to take root in you in a certain way that's not just intellectual, that's not just with the mind or the mentality, and that's not just I was going to say not just rational, but actually it becomes more rational to you because there's an expansion or infusion of a kind of consciousness that supplements the conscious mind that can only look back at what it already knows to make a determination about what's in front of it. So this is a way that I want to talk about faith today to kind of disassociate it from blind belief without, because the Dharma really uses a lot of reasoning to satisfy the mind so that the mind can settle down, the mind can open up, the mind becomes more malleable and delighted in investigating. The mind it's about and it's the delight in investigating that actually creates the true possibility to enter into or or to allow prajna to reveal, you know, its qualities. It's there has to be a delight in knowing that there is something else and that I can know it, that I can enter into it. So there's this scripture says, except you be as little children, you shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. It's kind of speaking about how inquisitive children are, wanting how they find joy in learning new things, how they can accept it helps us to accept a theory, but a theory only remains a theory until one is penetrated to the truth of it. So it allows us to see, and it's an energy that allows us to go the distance to find the truth of something, as opposed to well, that's what they said, and so I accept it, or that's what they said, and I don't believe it. You know, that you run out of steam. It provides the steam in the engine to allow one to keep checking, you know, and every day we learn probably 1,000 new things that we don't even recognize. We have learned something new until we go to check back on the way we held something and we find that it's slightly different or it's more expanded, or, you know, I thought that way yesterday, but now I think this, or I think this and I think this, you know. And while that might not be the end story of it, it inches us a little further or creates more of an opening that something else can come and then further clarify for us. And this needs to be gradual, that's why it calls it a gradual path. Because we learn line by line, we learn precept by precept, we learn here a little and there a little. And when we start to bring it all together, then it's like the sum is greater than its individual parts. It's something like that. So sometimes we are unable to establish verbal expressions to explain things. And that's our difficulty, not just with language, Prajna, but even with the arising of our five consciousnesses, our internal basis and connecting with external basis, even they do not have a capacity for expression. It's only when the mind consciousness joins with them. Now we've got a form of expression. And without that, however, it would be impossible. It's absolutely impossible for our basis to give rise to discrimination. So we can see that our greatest problem is the mind consciousness that discriminates based on going into its database and how it has collected information, and anything we see new, is filtered through that lens. So what kind of Dharma would this be if it was something that could come out of the mind? It would just be an ordinary phenomena. And many of us take this Dharma to be ordinary phenomena. And because it's ordinary to us, we can't receive much from it. Because that mind consciousness has slotted it, it's already put it in its category. So to one who thinks it's great, it's great. And to one who thinks it's not so much, it's not so much. So when we're evaluating the worth of the Dharma, we should know that we set or determine its value. You just can't say the Dharma is great, you just can't receive it. Or, we can't say it like that because it's not like that. Every person gives the Dharma its value to them. So sometimes we want to say, well, don't worry about it because the Dharma will take care of it. The Dharma will fix it for them. No, it won't. It won't fix it for you. It's only according to the value that you give it. So when we are walking through life on a daily basis, he says that we should practice making offerings to those above and to giving alms to those below. Because these beings are indispensable to us who learn Buddha Dharma. We should not regard holy beings or Dharma protectors as having the purpose of punishing people. Rather, if we cultivate ourselves well, they will come and help us. This is not a superstitious doctrine. I'm telling you this based upon the rules, the realization, the words, the precepts, the tenets, and the meanings of the teachings of the greatly virtuous ones. And then he started talking, he about the mind consciousness to help us. In other words, I'm talking about how really important it is to understand mind consciousness. Because it can cause you to become accomplished and it can cause you to descend. Everything relates to mind consciousness. When the mind consciousness is halted, everything is halted. If the internal sense bases of the body and the external sense objects are all realized as being empty, then the intermediary mind consciousness has no role to play. So right now we're thinking in terms of good and bad. We think rise and fall. We think excel and digress. We think, and we have given the value to those things, right? And so now we're talking about well, I call it a hack, but I'm not calling it a hack like in a get over kind of way. I'm calling it a hack in the sense that it would shortcut some of the time and the effort you put forth if you would focus at penetrating the truth of this first. And so he says that if when the mind consciousness is halted, everything is halted. Consciousness, then, as an intermediary, would have nothing to stand on. So if the internal sense bases of the body and the external sense objects, I see something, ears hear something, are all realized as being empty, then the mind consciousness would have no role to play. This is what we are told. On the one hand, when the mind consciousness is halted, external sense objects can be realized, can be seen, can be understood as being empty. Conversely, as I said, when one can realize the sense bases and the sense objects as being empty, the mind consciousness naturally has no role to play. So we have two choices in how we try to understand this. One choice is if we can realize the mind consciousness as empty and the external objects as being empty, ultimately empty. Well, let me read this again. On one hand, when the mind consciousness, if halted, external sense objects can be realized as empty. Conversely, when one can realize the sense bases and sense objects as being empty, the mind consciousness naturally has no role to play. So you cannot sit there and try to quiet your mind, to empty your mind. You cannot do it. The mind has no role to play cannot operate, cannot rise, cannot function if one is adjusting to the notion of all phenomena being inherently empty. That's how the mind stops. We're trying to stop the mind. It says it's very difficult to stop the mind. But when we can begin to see the emptiness behind all phenomena, the mind will stop. So we're really approaching it from the wrong end. Yeah. Now that might take some time to sit there with. That's why he's talked about it like 200 times. He says it 200 times, 200 different ways, because we haven't heard it in this way, but other things we have heard 200 times, in a different way. But he says, let me try to reverse something for you. If you take that plan, although you see it there now, if you came back in 10 years, it would not be there. So behind the existence of this plan, there is emptiness. It will go back to that state of non-existent, not there. And when I think about it, yeah, I can understand that. 500 years from now, I don't care how solid this house is, it will probably all be dirt in 500 years, and we can understand. So we can intellectually assent to the emptiness of that. And it's going to be easier for the mind to actually understand and penetrate emptiness if we kind of look at it that way. Not like trying to analyze it. I mean, we just know for a fact that, all phenomenal things decay and fall away. It truly is. We can't even argue with the emptiness of that. So why not start with something that we absolutely agree with, that we can understand in our minds, instead of struggling to understand a concept that we have so much difficulty trying to factor and break down. I mean, you just know it's going to fall apart. You know it's going to end, and so it's empty. And there are causes and conditions that allow it to come into being. Same thing goes for our clothes, same thing goes for us. So we really do have a capacity to realize and to totally accept mentally, even rationally, the concept of emptiness. Would anybody disagree? And yet we're still struggling every day to try to understand the concept of emptiness. And we really do understand the concept of emptiness. That's what he's saying. It says it's like a painting. I'll give you this example. A painting is made using paper, colors, and the use of a brush. When colors are applied to the paper, the brush plays a role. It's an intermediary role. As the colors are applied to the paper, the actions of the brush are thus displayed. As colors make contact with the paper, the shapes and images created, as well as the movement and the speed of the brush, are displayed. Suppose the paper and colors become empty or non-existent. When they naturally are empty, such that the paper and colors are no longer present, then the brush naturally has no use. The brush is of no use. It cannot be used to paint anything. Upon what can it be used to paint? Hence, it cannot generate any usefulness. The same is true for the truth about the sixth consciousness. If you can realize such emptiness, if you can, in this aspect, achieve an understanding of emptiness, you'll naturally leave the boundaries of the six ordinary Dharma realms. The three good realms and the three bad realms, we know what they are. The hell realm, the hungry ghost realm, the animal realm, human realm, Deva, and the God realms. Okay, you will not descend. If you can realize emptiness with this state of realization, you will not descend into samsara. So we're talking about a rebirth linking consciousness. So it's important to be trying to, I guess, we prepare for end of life, because we know at some point all of this is going to fall apart, right? And the time to start trying to prepare is not when it's about to fall apart, because you don't even have the strength, you don't have the energy, you don't have the faculties, you don't have the I would say you can't even garner enough interest, just too tired, And so he says that we have to be working with this. We can't put this off until we're ready to leave this world. Then all we will have is a reincarnation, a descent back into samsara, because we have not realized the truth of emptiness. What causes that descent back into samsara?
Just one part.
Just one thought. That our final thought should be on the emptiness of all phenomena. And so he's telling us how to begin to lean or incline our mind in a certain way. And he says that if you do this, you really will see the results of it. It will start to come to you on this side. That I hope I make it, but on this side, you will start to see the truth, the reality of it. The same way we see the truth and the reality of our impermanence. We know, if not day by day, we know year by year. If not year by year, we know decade by decade, that we're moving towards demise. We know that. But in the same way, the realization can open up that we don't have to move towards demise. This would be the last birth. So then that says that there is something else besides birth and death. Right? So it doesn't mean that when one awakens in this life, that they won't die, because this is already in motion. This is already here. It's doing its thing. But no birth and no death is not being locked and fixed in a false reality that is created by avidya, that's created by ignorance. Doesn't mean that there is nothing, but it's just there won't be anything that decays and dies. And if you were contemplating this truth, he says you can realize it. But you have to be contemplating the truth, not contemplating, I don't see how that's possible. Not contemplating, I don't get it. We have to be contemplating the truth. to get it. We want to get something, but we want it to just be given to us somehow. We don't, but the work comes in contemplating it until you penetrate to the truth of it. We all know that some understanding that we had a month ago, or 6 months ago, or a year ago, or even 2 days ago, it's more clear to us today than it was 2 days ago, or 6 months ago, or a year ago, because we keep looking at the truth of it, and it reveals itself, it unveils itself, and it reconditions the mind. And this is how we come into the truth of the Dharma. The 5 aggregates and the 18 realms of cognition all belong to the 6 ordinary Dharma realms. That is, all living beings in the 6 realms, regardless of whether they are in the hell, hungry, ghost, animal, human, deva, or asura realm, are candidly speaking tied up inside those realms due to avidya, right? They're fettered. We're fettered inside samsara, and as such, there is no end to their births and deaths. They forever live in this cycle of birth and death, death and birth, ceaselessly revolving. There is never an end to it. That's why it's called samsara, the cycle of living and dying. Today, we realize the non-existence of all of them, for they have all been illuminated as being empty. Using the illumination of prajna wisdom, one can realize emptiness that is reality, and then one is not bound by birth and death. One is not fettered by birth and death. And if one is not tied to that, how can there still be samsara for you? One has transcended the realm of transmigration and has entered the true thusness that is the Dharma nature, the state of true emptiness and marvelous utilization, the state that is forever free of birth and death. This is called the state of liberation. It is called the state of accomplishment. It is called the land or the world of the Buddhas. So in this practice, there is a changing, a shifting of classification. That's why I was interested about what is the tree, you know. Maybe that's just a fake statement to make me question something, you know, that I actually see as a living thing. I've been thinking lately that how, you know, like we're at the top of the food chain as sentient beings, but the Buddhas, they're a different classification of being, and not caught in the cycle of birth and death. Doesn't mean nothing, but it means something outside of that. that we're trying to understand and penetrate to. Something outside of that. What can we think? Oh, there's nothing outside of that. There's only animals, and humans. Some people only think there's only animals and humans. Some don't think that some who maybe had some kind of introduction to relationship with or encountered a ghost, and then they know that there's a ghost around. But if you haven't, you might not know it. So you say, no, I don't, show me a ghost, like you haven't seen it. But for the one who has, they know that there's the ghost realm, right? That's what I'm saying. I've been having some dreams lately, and I've been seeing some things that I wouldn't even be able to draw them of some other beings, and I don't like, I've always been sort of afraid of my daughter, my mother, on my mother's side, they would have what you call being born with, they called it the veil. And so they like see things, and I wasn't one who like saw things. I'm like, well, that generation skipped me. It skipped a generation. So my mother had it, I didn't have it. My daughter has it. So I said, well, look, I'll take you somewhere and get somebody who can help you, because I don't know about those things and I don't want to know about those things. And so I'm very sensitive to other, something like non-human, non-physical in the way we understand physicality, good and not good. I don't want to see anything. So we'd be sitting in the table room and say, Ma, it's distracting me. This man that just keeps walking back and forth in the kitchen, and like, let's go out for lunch, is my response, because now I know about it. Before I didn't know about it, but now I got the creeps, So I've always had a sort of a fear around it, and but because I know it's a real thing, as time is winding up, I have to deal with it. So now I'm going through a phase where I'm getting all of these kinds of beings showing up, and Buddha said, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. So when the first ones come, I said, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. Like, okay, so I'm not gonna be afraid. I love holy beings, but some of them, I don't know, hell realm looking beings, they don't feel good to me, I know it's my fear of them, but there's something about their energy and even how I visually, conceptualize them that scares the bejeebies out of me, and so I
Dharma
would.
protectors are pretty scary.
Oh, they sure are, and it's just because that's our own mind fashioning something, The Buddha Master said, even if you see a Buddha, that's your own mind, creating that. So I'm thinking, like, I'm really thinking about things, the illusory nature of things, because I don't want those Buddhas to be like real in my mind. I'm thinking the illusory nature of these beings, so. But what I realized, and I said, okay, now can't be scared of them. So if my hair starts standing up and I get little chilly bumps on me, like I'm calming the mind down. Just relax mind. I don't have to be afraid of any of this, I mean, what have I to do with them? What? What do I have to do with them or their mind? Nothing, so I don't have to be afraid. So I've been going through that, and I have found that over this period of time, and it's been going on for a few weeks now, that I'm less and less moved by the presence. And I said, one day, not today, but one day, because compassion is rising for me, in me, concerning their predicament, you know, because I can even feel the energy. The energy is very violent, extremely gross, murderous, you know. But I'm little by little holding it. That's all. And one day there will be absolutely no fear of them, you know. And that's part of this bodhisattva path that I'm on, you know. Right now, I don't have the capacity, you know, to hold them. So utilization is not possible, you know. But one day I know that it will be. And this is happening bit by bit, as I am, you know, confronted with it. And I am accepting the reality of it, but I'm also seeing the emptiness of it. And that's how we expand and how we grow. We all want to be of use, but we don't have the capacity to be of use. And that capacity doesn't come like a doink on the head, but bit by bit, we build up our capacity. Bit by bit, we change our mind and we see the preciousness, you know, of all beings, bit by bit, so that the hell being for me becomes same as my daughter, seeing them both equally. And this doesn't happen overnight, doesn't happen over a lifetime. It takes many, 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 many lifetimes, but we don't know how many lifetimes we've already existed. We don't know. But just to know that it can take a long time unless we can penetrate to the emptiness behind all arisen phenomena. So whether it's a chair that's made, or whether it's a ghost that arises, if I can know that they are impermanent and not real, because I see the realness part of it, but I can see the corresponding emptiness, then all the power of fear falls away. Also, all the power of cherishing indiscriminately or discriminately also falls away. And what I can hold, like the love I can hold for my daughter, I can hold it for a hell being. Somebody sent out a photo of a monk, and they superimposed Trump's head on it. So there was Trump. It was like a stretch, you know, for me. But then I looked and I really held him for a minute right there. I mean, I could only hold for a minute, okay? I'm being honest. But for a minute, I chose to see him in a different light. So we have to go to the places that scare us to find it, to realize that there's no danger there. And we have to move towards the opposite ways that we think and understand and attach to things in order to truly grow and develop. And if we're willing to do that, then we won't care whether things are good or bad. We won't care whether things are happening good or bad, because our ultimate vision and scope will be so expanded that there's plenty good room for all of it, because we understand the temporariness, the emptiness behind it. And then from that space, there is the promise of utilization, being able to work with whatever is there, whatever is needed, because our muscles will have been exercised by reason of use. You know, I'm closing now. Bruce Lee, I think he was maybe one of the ones who were really engaged in, you know, using the mind, like picturing, picturing his moves and picturing his moves without actually doing them, and he found that he could practice. It didn't mean he didn't have to practice physically, but that he could also up his game if he kept running it. He kept running it in his mind, and then later on, they found out the same thing, practicing three pointers with your, with your mind. You didn't have to actually, shoot the ball, but there's a way that you could
Visualize.
yeah, and come into a proficiency just through doing that. I'm trying to do that with walking right now. And then maybe I'll get up and start. I'm walking more. I'm really looking at ways. How can I make myself move? Because the just get up and do it is not working for me. So now I envision myself walking every day. First, I envisioned myself on my rebounder, and now I'm up to, some days I'm trying to do 200 steps because I have an excuse from the doctor that says no more than 200 steps. So I'm trying to walk 200 times on the rebounder, and I don't make it every day, but the days that I don't, I lay in bed and I'm walking on it. And so I'm just use what you can, to begin to shift and change your mind. And you'll see that before you know it, the other shore that you're trying to get to is no place other than right where you are, naturally. Yeah. Mhm. Any-
It's like the fear that we have of the unknown, the ghosts or what have you, comes from our not understanding. So if we realize emptiness and we see, what's really behind this whole existence that we're in, then it kind of takes the punch out of it a little bit,
Mhm.
from a fear perspective. We only fear what we don't kind of understand.
Mhm.
When you think about a ghost, I mean, they're self-attached. We live amongst self-attached living beings, right? And we know how bad that can get.
Yeah.
Just the self-attachment and the self-protection and all that, right? So now you got self-attached living being, but your karate is not gonna help because they're not physical.
Right. That's
So,
right.
right, so that generates a fear, right? I mean, how would I handle it if they really got aggressive and somehow, were able to physically, impact me? But if we
You gotta
understand
be
that,
able to send up that beacon. That's why you need Dharma Protectors. Right?
yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
So who is your Dharma protector?
Okushima, who's
Back left.
him, the
And what is his name?
Uchusma,
Uchusma?
who is the rightful form of Shakyamuni Buddha.
He looks really fierce.
It's fierce.
So are you?
I feel so fierce. There's fierce out here. That's what I'm telling you. It's fierce. Okay, somebody want to close for me?
May all beings living in samsara benefit from the merit that we offer here from having listened to and contemplated the Dharma. From all the merit that we acquire, we give from having practiced, learn to overcome the shackles that bind us. May that merit help others to take steps towards the same freedom.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Venerable.